This is a video about how I'm going to use my graphic organizer to against a poem. So it's a model of how you would use this graphic organizer when I assign a poem to the class. This is a graphic organizer that I'm using. What you do is as you read the poem and you find a quote that contains literary device, you write the quote down and then you add what literary device is used on the side to provide a quick reference for class discussion. The poem I'm going to be using is A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. So as I read the poem, I'm going to read out loud just to model my thought process. My love is like a red, red rose. So right there, I already found a literary device. If possible, I would underline on the original poem itself, but that's not always feasible if it's not a book that you own or it's a book that's in school. So I would add onto my literary device organizer the quote that my love is like a red, red rose. And as I'm writing this down, in my head I go, okay, I know this is a literary device. What's being used here? Well, it's a comparison, and it does use the word like or as. Therefore, it must be a simile. So in the column that says literary device, I'm just going to write a simile because I know that a simile is a comparison that uses the words like or as. I will then continue reading the poem that's newly sprung in June. My love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. So yet again, I found another literary device. So I'm going to underline, and then on my device sheet, I'm going to say, my love is like the melody. And again, in my head, I'm going, okay, so it's a comparison, and it is using like or as, so it must be a simile. And again, I'm going to write down simile in the literary device column. So now my graphic organizer is getting filled out nicely. And I will continue with the poem. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. And if I was reading this and I didn't know what that meant, I could also annotate the poem, which is a good literary thing to do when you're reading it if you're confused. I might underline this and put a question mark and add, a little note for myself to look up definition, where I would then go online and look up the definition for gang dry. So as you can see, I wrote on the side of my poem to add clarification for myself, and when I do go look it up, I'm going to add the definition on the side here. I'm going to continue with the poem, and till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. So right there I'm going, okay, I have another literary device and the rocks melt with the sun. So over here on my graphic organizer, I'm going to write, and the rocks melt with the sun. And that's not a comparison, but I know it's literary device because I know about hyperbole, and you know that rocks aren't going to actually melt with the sun. It's an exaggeration. Therefore, that must be a hyperbole. And I'm going to write that down on the side of my graphic organizer, so I have that as a reference. And I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And again, there you have another literary device. So I'm going to write down, while the sands of life shall run. And I'm going to call that personification because sands don't run. That's a human attribute. So, but he's giving it to sands. And therefore, I'm going to add personification on to my literary device line. And of course, if I do not realize that that is a literary device, but I'm not sure what it is, there is the visual scaffold that I have that can jog your memory of what literary devices you're looking for and what and you can always look up the definitions if needed. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while, and I will come again, my love, though it were 10,000 mile. So that's about all the literary devices that I found for this poem, and I have filled them out in my handy dandy little graphic organizer. I've also underlined them on my poem itself, but you can see I didn't write down in the poem. I kept that on my graphic organizer so I can keep my annotations to things that I need to look up and find a definition for. So that's my video for how to use my graphic organizer when confronted with a poem or a text that I give them to locate literary devices.